Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to GameClock, your new favorite sports show. I'm your host, Michael Pales, and we are back after a 1 week hiatus because I was under the weather. Luckily, no weather delays happened in this week of football, so it's excited. I'm excited to start talking about it. In quarter one, we're going to break down week 3 because I sadly was sick last week, so I'll be able to talk a little bit about it. Then quarter 2, we're going to talk about week 4 and all the craziness that ensued. We'll talk about during halftime special teams and how it is so much more valuable than I think people realize. And then we're going to talk about week 6, week 5 coming up into quarter 3 and quarter 4. So, without ado, let's get to the first quarter and let's start the clock. Ready, go. Whistle's blown. We're going into the first set of games. So, week 3 was really dominated by special teams. I'll talk more about special teams during halftime, but there were a lot of games that were like, wow, these are impressive. A lot of backups started. That was the big conversation point last week was backups. Bills did not look as dominant against the Dolphins as I expected them to, but the Dolphins looked better. The Dolphins looked like a competent football team, which they did not in the first 2 weeks. Obviously, this is a week ago, so a lot of people, this is not new information, but the Dolphins looked like a competent football team, but the Bills still look like one of the best teams in football. The Bengals have not looked good since losing Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is clearly the guy that makes everything happen. They are 0-2 since losing Joe Burrow. This was the first loss, and they got smacked by the Vikings and Carson Wentz because the defense is not good, and Jake Browning doesn't know how to run that offense. And then taking a look, the Texans lost to the Jaguars. That was just a slow game. I will say, I would preface this, I was not able to watch as much of football that week as I would have liked to. I was sick, so I was asleep for most of the games. However, a lot of things did happen. The Colts smacked the Titans. The Colts have looked like a very, very strong football team. Daniel Jones continues to look like a very proficient quarterback. And once we break into week 4, I will have more conversation about that. Then Commanders. Marcus Mariota was the starting quarterback for the Commanders. And if anyone remembers, Marcus Mariota did play for the Raiders at one point. He was a backup for the Raiders before, I believe right after he was at the Falcons or before he went to the Falcons, one of the two. And he smacked his old team, just absolutely demolished them. It was a masterclass in just how to play the game, run the offense, and it was a very, very strong game by Marcus Mariota as a quarterback. It was really quite impressive. And the Raiders, Geno Smith has not looked that good. I think people are realizing that after a couple of mediocre years of Geno, other than the resurging year that he had back when he first kind of came back up with Seattle, he's not been that proficient. He's been very much an aggressive quarterback when it comes to passes, and he's given up and stats guys have been able to kind of argue and be like, oh, no, you just see his aggression. That's why he has so many picks. And then this year you've seen kind of that he doesn't have that efficiency. And even going back with Pete Carroll, the coach that kind of brought that back, I don't think that that's the solution. The other piece is that I think that the Raiders may have put the cart before the horse in drafting Ashton Jeanty. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be hard stuck in a difficult situation behind a bad O-line for the foreseeable future. And obviously he will make huge plays, but he's gotten majority of his yards. I believe it's 51% of his yards after contact. That's unheard of for a running back. He doesn't have these breakaway runs where he doesn't get touched. He gets touched in the backfield because the O-line can't hold a block. And so as a result, you saw that kind of come into play against the Commanders with a team with a proficient pass rush. We'll talk more about how it shifted in this past week. But regardless, Eagles beat the Rams. The Eagles were beating the Rams 27 to 26. Rams lined up for a game-winning field goal, and it got blocked and returned for a touchdown by Jordan Davis. And when you have a game that was, honestly, the Eagles offense looked really, really rough early on in that game, and then their pass offense started to take off in the second half, but the Eagles showed cracks against a contender, which is the Rams. And I think as a result of that, you kind of saw hey, this team might not be as good as everyone says they are. I think their special teams is one of the best units. I think their defense is one of the best units, but I don't know if their offense is as dominant as it was last year. So just things to keep your eyes out for. Rams look good. Puka Nacua is on pace to be an offensive player of the year. He is looking fantastic and looks like he's going to be an offensive player of the year candidate. My Bijan Robinson pick is not looking too good when it comes to my prediction for offensive player of the year, but I think as time goes on, as the season progresses, we'll see kind of it probably level out because he's on pace for 2,100 yards right now, which would be record breaking. He'd be the first player to ever have 2,000 yard receiving year, which would be insane, but I don't necessarily see that happening. I see a point at which he will slow down, but regardless, we'll see how that goes. Falcons versus Panthers. Apologies. Panthers cooked the Falcons in this game. The Falcons offense really, really struggled. They could not get anything going. I think it's hard. I think at times Michael Penix shows... I'm sorry. Clear out my sinuses. Okay. Michael Penix has shown flashes and has shown that he can be a proficient passer, but I feel like it's going to be hard stuck to find a better spot. And also, he does have Kirk Cousins looking over his shoulder. Obviously, Kirk knows how to be in a backup role and is obviously being supportive of the rookie, but you have to know that Kirk Cousins is behind you, and obviously Kirk got benched for Michael Penix, but if Michael Penix continues to have struggles, you probably could see Kirk coming back. Obviously, I don't think that's a huge case, but it very well could happen. Next up, Steelers beat the Patriots. The Steelers won off of turnovers. The Patriots looked like the better team, but Drake May fumbles and turnovers really are what hurt this team the most. And as a result, I think that you saw that be reflected in the stat sheet. So, because the Steelers won off of a game-losing fumble. Packers lost to the Browns that week, and what this really showed me is the Browns defense is a top 5 defense, if not top 2 in the league right now. They are arguably one of the best defenses in the NFL, and as a result of that, they were able to beat the Packers because the Packers offense just couldn't get going. And a lot of teams showed cracks that we thought were going to be these super dominant, unbeatable teams in this week of the NFL. And so from that perspective, I feel like looking back on it, especially after having seen this most recent week, it's really interesting to see how everything shook out. Jets lost to the Buccaneers. That game was quite a close game. I was unable to watch that, so I'm not really inclined to talk much about it. What I will say is it was Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor was the quarterback for that game because he was one of the backups starting. Otherwise, it was a pretty decent stint for him. I think Tyrod Taylor held his own, but the Buccaneers are a very, very good football team and probably clearly the favorites to win the South. Broncos lost to the Chargers. The Chargers won this game. I'm providing very little insight on that game. I apologize. I wish I could. Herbert continues to show that he's one of the most efficient and top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. And Bo Nix has not looked as good as people were touting him as. I think that right now, if I were to predict who the best in that class outside of Jaden Daniels, who has been hurt in the past couple weeks, right now, the best quarterback from that draft class is Drake May. By far, I think Drake May has been the better quarterback and the best quarterback. Obviously, the Steelers game wasn't the best, but this past week, he really showed that he is that guy. And I think that Drake May very well could be a guy that shows up further and is clearly a generational talent. I think people are like, why do the Patriots go from have a little bit of turmoil for a couple of years and then all of a sudden draft this generational talent? Who knows? The Patriots have some sort of voodoo magic, apparently. Seahawks whooped the Saints. Sam Darnold looked very good in that game. I have nothing else to say. The Saints are not a very good team, and I think, again, they are my pick to have the worst record in the league. Cowboys lost to the Bears. The Bears' offense actually looked competent against the Cowboys' defense, but the Cowboys' defense is not very good. And I think if their offense isn't firing on all cylinders, they're going to be hard stuck to win any games. It's going to be really, really difficult to win any games for them. Cardinals versus Niners. Niners beat the Cardinals with Mac Jones starting and from that perspective, I think the Cardinals. I'll have more to talk about them in this upcoming week once we get into the next quarter. But the 49ers have been able to find ways to grit it out and win games, and that was shown in this game. So, Chiefs beat the Giants. Really, the only shining moment from the Giants was Cam Skattebo. Skattebo has been really taking it over since Tyrone Tracy got injured, and Scat looks like a very, very good running back. He's a hard runner. Obviously, I think there will be questions about longevity with just the way he runs, but so far he's been one of the most exciting backs in the league to watch. Bar none, he has been one of the most exciting backs to watch. Doesn't have the stats, doesn't necessarily have all of the big plays, but he is a very, very fun player to watch. And Lions beat the Ravens. Lions look like a top team. And that the Ravens, I'll have more to talk about in the upcoming quarter. So that's quarter one. We're going to move on to quarter two real fast as we restart. And we're going into quarter two in week 4 of the NFL season. I was unable to do predictions about this week because, I was sick. I was not able to get to the predictions. But this week has really was an interesting one. Obviously, we had a game in Dublin. We had the Thursday night football game, but it was a very, very interesting game. Still, once again, a lot of special teams did come into play this week. Seahawks versus Cardinals. This game revealed a lot to me. One, Chad Ryland showed everyone what the landing zone is and how impactful that is, because the Seahawks were able to have a game-winning drive as a result of the fact that they got the ball on the 40-yard line of their own side, because the ball was, I think, a yard away from landing in the landing zone because of the new kickoff rules. So first time the kickoff rules have really played that big of a role in this most recent game. But the thing I want to talk about is Kyler Murray has been an enigma for Cardinals fans for a long time. This is his 7th year in the league. Kyler Murray, because he was drafted number 1 overall, has gotten a lot of leeway as a quarterback. If you had a quarterback that was drafted in maybe the mid to late rounds and he was playing at this level, I don't think he would be still at this team. I don't think he would still be with the Cardinals. The issue is obviously the Cardinals put a first-round draft pick, a first overall draft pick into him. And Kyler is just good enough to not be so bad that you have to cut him, but he's not going to be good enough to elevate this team to a Super Bowl contender. I think as long as Kyler Murray is on this roster, I don't think the Cardinals are going to have necessarily a Super Bowl winning team. I think they could have a team that maybe makes a playoff or two. I think Kyler has shown that he can be a good enough quarterback to manage the offense to get to a playoff game, but I don't know if Kyler is the guy that's going to push them over the edge and win them a Super Bowl. I feel like the Cardinals are going to have to start looking at some point. If it's not after this season, it might be after next. And what I will say is Kyler has gotten bad coordinators. Cliff Kingsbury was not necessarily the best coordinator. I don't think Drew Petzing really takes advantage of Kyler, but I very much think that Kyler could be on the hot seat come December, come next offseason. I very well could see there be talks about Kyler leaving. Steelers, Vikings. Carson Wentz looks like Carson Wentz. Threw a couple of interceptions. It was really hard, but Aaron Rodgers looked good. Aaron Rodgers was making the right passes, was hitting the ball, putting the ball in the right spot. The only thing that was really of note was obviously really rough to see the Jalen Ramsey injury, and the Steelers almost felt that as they were leading 24-14, and the Vikings were able to march down the field and score a touchdown. And if not for a really, really rough last drive, the Vikings would have had a shot at winning the game, but the Steelers defense stood strong and was able to get the win out, and I think that Aaron Rodgers helped elevate them. I think that Kenneth Gainwell was a huge, huge contributor of that. It was an extremely proficient back, especially being able to step up after Jaylen Warren went down. So I think that I liked what I saw of the Steelers. I think the Steelers are going to be really competitive in this AFC North, especially after how the Ravens looked on Sunday and also how the Bengals have looked since post-Joe Burrow injury. Commanders and Falcons. Falcons beat the Commanders. I think this was one where you saw Mariota and kind of what his faults and his not inability to score, but he just wasn't very effective, and I think the Falcons were really able to exploit that. So from that perspective, I think that Falcons obviously won the game. Obviously, it's going to be a good deal. Once again, I still put into question where Penix falls when it comes to his hierarchy and how good of a quarterback he is, but we'll see how it goes. I think Bijan is probably going to be the statement of that offense. Chargers-Giants. I watched the majority of this. I think I watched all this game, and this was a great game. Chargers took their first loss of the season to the Giants. The Giants' defense played out of their mind. Dexter Lawrence got a pick and should have been a pick six if not for Justin Herbert being able to chase down the big man. I love seeing a D lineman or a lineman get the ball and just start going and just start running. And I was gonna get so hype. I physically left my seat when I saw him get the pick, and I was so ready to get so hyped when he scored the touchdown and he didn't get the touchdown. But then, they had a little, I believe it was a shovel pass option to the tight end that scored that touchdown. Or it might have been, no, it was Jackson Dart who ran it in for his first touchdown of his career, I believe. So, very fun game, very fun to see the Giants. The Giants, I don't think are going to be a very good team, but are going to be a very fun team to watch. And the Chargers are going to feel the Joe Alt injury. The Giants lost Malik Neighbors. I think that turf is a problem, and I want to talk more about that at some point. But, I think turf is not good for people and their health. And I think that FIFA actually has it right. Titans got smacked. I think their head coach is gone soon rather than later. He's going to squander Cam Ward's career if he's not careful. Brian Callahan is not a very good coach, and I think that that's going to be shown. The Texans looked very good, but they managed the game. I think that there were some plays where I was like, CJ Stroud just doesn't have time. The O-line is non-existent right now for the Texans, so that's really difficult. Eagles beat the Buccaneers by 6, and the Eagles' first score came on special teams with a blocked punt, which is just insane to me that is what essentially won them the game. Their offense looked better. I still think there are cracks. I don't think the Eagles are the best team in the NFL. I think they're probably top 5, probably teetering on that 4 or 3 spot, but there's some better teams in the NFL right now, and I'll talk about one of them very shortly. Panthers-Patriots. Patriots smacked the Panthers. Stephon Diggs looked very good for someone coming off an ACL injury. He looked like he's finally figured out this offense. Drake May and him showed some connection, and so that excites me from a sense of the Patriots being able to start to succeed, start to see more Drake May success. So all in all, I think that the Patriots had a good game. I think Travion Henderson's probably going to start getting a little bit more action than Ramondre Stevenson. But either way, Patriots really dominated the Panthers. Saints lost to the Bills. The Saints made it a much closer game than I would have expected, but the Bills look like the best team in football. I think Josh Allen is carrying a lot of that, but James Cook has shown he's an effective runner. I think that O-line is top 5, if not top 3 in the NFL right now, and you're seeing that affect games. I don't think the Bills lose a game until they either play the Chiefs, who looked better this week, I will talk more about that, or the Eagles in December. I think the Bills have the best chance of continuing to carry on this undefeated streak. Remember how I said the Browns defense is top 5 in the league, possibly top 3? I still believe that, but the Lions look like a contender out of contender. They got a wake-up call after that first week and have said, we're not looking back, and have run with it. And they look very dominant. They look like they're going to win. They look like they're going to compete with the North with the Packers, but I'll talk more about the Packers a little bit later. Jaguars beat the 49ers. The Jaguars really just showed that they were able to outlast the Niners. The Niners did not necessarily execute when they needed to, but yeah. I wasn't able to pay as much attention to that game, so that one I don't have as much insight, but I will say Jags very well could have a competition for the South. I don't think that there's a clear and away, well, there is a clear and away favorite, and I'm about to talk about them. It's the Colts. The Colts versus the Rams. The Colts had 14 points called back because of penalties. Adonai Mitchell, by himself, caused 14 points not to count for his team. That's really difficult. I think the Colts are still probably one of the top teams in the NFL. They have a fantastic O-line. They have a great running attack, and Daniel Jones has been able to put the ball on the money when they need it. From that perspective, they also have a very good defense. I think that the Colts are still going to continue to be a competitor, and the Rams, Puka Nacua, continues to be one of the top players in the league. Bears beat the Raiders. They outlasted them. The Bears were able to win off of, I believe, a blocked field goal, another special teams unit that I will talk about. The Bears beat the Raiders off a blocked field goal, which was impressive. The Ravens lost Lamar with a hamstring injury. You saw that affected. Cooper Rush played the entire fourth quarter. And as a result, I think that you see that the Ravens really are going to struggle if they don't have Lamar. And their defense is not going to be able to win them games because the Chiefs put up 37. The Chiefs very much missed Xavier Worthy. The Packers game and the Cowboys went to overtime and they tied. And it was a crazy shootout. And for the Packers to have one of the top defenses, they let up 40 points by the Cowboys, which is really difficult. Jets-Dolphins, biggest storyline out of the Dolphins game. They lost Tyreek Hill to a season-ending ACL injury. The Jets, Justin Fields is not the problem. We're gonna take a little bit of extra time. One moment. There's too much to talk about. I'm gonna real sec pause that. This is a challenge on the field. We're going a little overtime right now. We're going to put 2 extra minutes on the clock. 1 second. We're putting 2 extra minutes on the clock here. They added extra time. As it keeps going, we're going to finish talking about this. 1 moment. As I lost my spot. There we go. Jets lost to the Dolphins. Clearly, I think that Justin Fields is not the problem. I think there are other issues in New York. I think Justin Fields has played exceptionally efficient. He has not turned the ball over. He has 5 touchdowns. He has, I believe, 600 passing yards, and he is an effective rusher. I think that the Jets right now, the issue is not Justin Fields. Bengals need to trade for another quarterback. They are not going to be able to win with Jake Browning. Jake Browning is not as efficient as they needed him to be. And as a result of that, I think that the Broncos looked like a very efficient team, but that's because the Bengals have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and they no longer have one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL to be able to power that offense. And as a result, the offense is going to see a lowered production and is going to really struggle to win games. And that is what I will say. And that is overtime, done and dusted, as we head over to the beautiful thing that is, as we head to the halftime, as we increase the time. Obviously, it's a little bit clunky. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, but the halftime show has begun. We're going to be talking about special teams. Special teams includes kickoff return, punt return, field goal block, PAT, and PAT block. Special teams is what I would say has been quantified sometimes for some people as the I can say this redheaded stepchild of the team, like of the teams. You have the offense, flashy and great. You have the gritty defense, and then you have special teams over here in their little corner. Special teams can make or break games, and we have seen that in the past 2 weeks. There were, I believe, 3 blocked field goals at the exact same time in the game. You have a blocked punt returned for a touchdown. You have a blocked field goal that goes in favor of the Bears. Special teams players make games matter. They are what you notice. Special teams doesn't get noticed until it makes huge impacts. And I think that what you're seeing is that people are starting to realize, do special teams matter? Is special teams really that important? Yes, it is. Because special teams inherently changes the odds of you winning or losing a game. I don't know the statistic exactly, but I believe it's something like, I want to say 85% of teams that block a punt win the game. I am pulling that number out of thin air. But let me tell you, as a player, when you have when your team just gets, say, 3 and outed, or they just have a drive and they just sputter out, and then they're like punt. You have the punt unit out there. You're like, okay, try to put the ball in the like 10-yard line. Maybe slow this team down, make them have to have a long drive, and then you go for the punt. Sit hut, and you just turn. And as you're a player running downfield trying to find where the punt goes, you look back and you see the ball rolling as a opposing team's player picks it up and runs it towards the end zone. That is one of the most demoralizing things you can see as a football player. And that can change games. Football is a momentum-based game. If you have the momentum, you will be able to win the game. And the biggest shifts in momentum, no matter how much people want to say, oh, it's a massive touchdown, it's a huge turnover, it is when you block a punt, when you block a field goal and return it for a touchdown. Some of the biggest plays in history of football come from special teams. The kick six in the Iron Bowl, that Auburn's going to win the football game, is a special teams moment. A blocked field goal wins the game for the Eagles. A blocked punt won the game for the Eagles this past year. People look back and don't think about they obviously see game-sealing moments and big picks, but I think special teams has been under-recognized for its value on a team. It is so impactful. It makes such a difference. And for the guys who always are like, that's where some guys get paid. There are people that have become prolific players that started on special teams. One of the faces of the franchise for the Arizona Cardinals, Budda Baker, when he was drafted, did not start on the defense. He started on special teams, showed the kind of player he was, and now he has played as an All-Pro and a Pro Bowl level player. And I think that if you want to know who's going to become successful, you look at the guys that are making plays on special teams. You look at the guys who are showing up, who are scoring on fake plays, or are blocking field goals, or are returning them for touchdowns. Jordan Davis is a top pick, and he was on there, and he blocked it. Special teams, this is me on my soapbox. Special teams matters. Special teams matters. There's a reason that these players get paid as much as they do, because when they don't succeed, your team feels it. If you miss a game-winning kick, you feel it. If your game-winning kick gets blocked, you feel it. It is one of the most demoralizing things as a fan and as a player to see your team have a kick or a punt blocked and the other team score off of it. And so what I would like to do is I'm going to shout out every single special teams player at every single level, because you guys matter. You guys make or break teams, and you guys can single-handedly win games for your teams. And that is what I will say on special teams during this halftime show as I proceeded to dedicate it to the special teams players out there. As the clock winds out on halftime, we're going to be taking a look into week 5 and kind of break down who I think is going to continue to succeed in this half as we go back, get our clock reset and going as we go into the third quarter. Here in the third quarter, we're going to be talking about this week as we see in the very first game on Thursday Night Football, the Rams versus the 49ers. Huge divisional game. These are two of the top teams in the NFC West. Both teams are 3-1 coming into this matchup. And I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I'm taking the Rams. I think the Rams have looked very good. I think the Rams have had a very strong offense. Their defense continues to be a very strong defense. One of their only losses comes to them from the Eagles, which that Eagles game, again, they lost off of a blocked kick, which is not a fluke, but their team very dominant and continues to show it. They have an Offensive Player of the Year candidate. Matthew Stafford has shown that he continues to deliver the ball where it's needed. Kyron Williams has been an effective running back. I think that the Niners do have a chance. I think that Brock Purdy is taking a second to reacclimate after his turf toe injury. I think they still feel the lack of George Kittle. Ricky Pearsall has shown that he's taken steps, because I feel like Brandon Ayuk's been very quiet this year, but Ricky Pearsall has shown that he stepped up. One of my favorite plays from this week, or I think might have been this week or 2 weeks ago, but he blocked and pancaked a linebacker. And that is where, like, as a running back, you see your receiver pancake a lineman. You're so glad that guy's on your team. So I think the clear favorite for this game, not clear favorite, but I think the team that will win is the Rams. But I would not be surprised if the Niners make it a really close game. I think any NFC West game is going to be close. We've seen that in the past. The Cardinals-Niners game was a 1-point game. It took a game-winning field goal for the game between the Seahawks and the Cardinals, and then you also have the one play essentially was the difference between the Seahawks and Niners. So I think any game with the NFC West is going to be competitive. Vikings-Browns. The Vikings, I believe, are going to continue with Carson Wentz. It'll be really interesting to see how Carson Wentz plays against this top level of a defense that we see in the Browns. The Browns are going to be the hardest and best defense that he has played since he has become the starter. That first game he played was against the Bengals, which is one of the worst defenses in the NFL. I think that the Steelers are probably more of a middle tier, if not a top 15 defense right now, but the Browns are a top 5 defense. They obviously didn't look as good against the Lions, but the Lions, a lot of trickery, and have become a very competitive team. I don't think the Vikings have that as powerful of an offense as the Lions. So as a result, I think you're going to see that. But I still think the Vikings are going to win because I don't think that the Browns' offense is effective. They had Dylan Gabriel playing for them, and Dylan Gabriel did not show that much. And I think that you're wondering if you're Shedeur Sanders, hey, coach, you going to try to put me in? Which, really interesting thing. This is on topic. Shedeur Sanders was sitting as a third-string quarterback watching the game with a clipboard during that game. He told the Ravens no, he doesn't want to be drafted by them in the 5th round of the NFL draft. And with Lamar Jackson getting hurt in that fourth quarter, Cooper Rush, who was the backup quarterback for the Ravens, played the entire fourth quarter. And Shedeur said no, and he would have been playing on Sunday more than likely, which is a very interesting thing and a very interesting thought. So I have Vikings winning this game just because I don't think the Browns offense will be able to score enough to keep the game close. Cowboys versus Jets. This is going to be a shootout. Any game with the Cowboys this year is going to be a shootout because the Cowboys offense can go brrr, and so can and any team that's playing against their defense is going good. I think that the Cowboys are the Bengals of the NFC when it comes to bad defense, very good offense. And you see that in the score sheets. The Cowboys have been able to put up high amounts of points, but also as a result have given up a lot of points unless they're playing really poor teams. I think the Jets very well could win this matchup. I think Justin Fields, I think they just have enough where they're going to be able to eke it out on the Cowboys. So I think that it's going to be the Jets beating the Cowboys in that matchup. Giants versus the Saints. These might be two of the not worst teams in the NFL, but they are both bottom 5 teams in the NFL right now. Jackson Dart showed flashes this past week. He showed that he can be an effective rusher. He had, I think, 54 rushing yards. And he's also shown that he can put the ball where it needs to be when it matters and make some good reads. But we didn't really see a good deep ball from him. The only real deep ball shots didn't end up being completions, and they also lost Malik Neighbors. They don't really have that huge receiving threat, and I think Wan'Dale Robinson's their number 1 wide receiver now. So from that perspective, I think that they're really lacking in that offense, but I think they're going to be really strong in the run game, and I think the Saints are really going to struggle against it. Most teams that have played the Saints have been able to really establish the run and be really effective rushing teams. And that's where the Giants succeed. That's where Scattaboo is best. That's where Jackson Dart's very good. You have two of the hardest runners and hardest players and toughest players that I've seen play. And it's going to be a really fun game if you're a Giants fan because you're going to watch this and you're going to be like, these guys are our future. Very possibly. But also it's going to be a really fun game because those are just two very fun players to watch. So I think the Giants are going to beat the Saints because I do think the Saints are the worst team in the NFL. Raiders versus Colts. I think Colts bounce back after last week. I think they're going to stomp the Raiders. I think this is going to be a blowout game for the Colts. I think the Colts are still one of the top teams in the NFL. I think they're a top 6, maybe top 10. They're at least a top 10, if not a top 6 team in the NFL, based on record, but also based on how they've been playing. Jonathan Taylor has not come out of nowhere, but has bounced back after a year where he was a little bit off, and you're showing, oh, this is what happens when you put a very, very strong offensive line in front of a good running back and a halfway decent quarterback. And so from that perspective, I think we're going to see an effective game. We're going to see a bounce-back game from the Colts, and I don't think the Raiders team is going to be able to be as effective. Ashton Jeanty had a good game against the Bears, but the only reason he had a good game against the Bears because the Bears did not have a very good pass rush or very good rush defense. The Colts have a very, very good rush defense, so I think Genti's going to have a down week, and I think that the Colts are going to win this game pretty handedly. Panthers versus the Dolphins. I think the Panthers are going to win this game. Even though the Dolphins have clearly shown that they can win games because they did beat the Jets, I think they're going to miss the fact that they don't have Tyreek Hill. I don't necessarily know if Tua is going to be there, but I think that Tedero McMillan, Xavier Legette, I think Bryce Young is going to have quite a good game, and I think he's going to deliver the ball where it needs to. I think Tedero McMillan's going to have a day against these corners of the Dolphins. I don't think the Dolphins is a very good secondary, so as a result, I think Tedero McMillan is going to have probably his best game of the season against this Dolphins secondary. So I have the Panthers beating the Dolphins this upcoming week. We're also starting to see some of the first bye games this week because I believe the Bears are on bye week. I also feel like there's a couple other teams that I am missing, but I will talk more about that later as we get to the last 2 minutes of the third quarter. Broncos versus the Eagles. The Eagles win this game. I don't know if it's handily. I think that the Eagles are showing cracks and games are a little closer than I would like for a team that people like to tout as a top defense. Like we have a top 5 unit in each of our units. I'm like, I could give you top 5 in special teams and maybe top 5 in defense, but I don't know if your offense is there right now. Obviously, you have top 5 players in different positions, but I don't know if it's all cohesive. Obviously, their offense played much better against the Bucs, but the Broncos' defense is a very, very proficient defense. I think they have a very, very good secondary, and so you're going to have to rely on the ground game, which has not really been working as well for the Eagles. And so it'll be really interesting to see how both teams approach this next matchup and approach this next game. And very well could be a very interesting matchup come Sunday. I do think it's going to be the Eagles that win, but it's going to be by the skin of their teeth. Ravens Eagles. If Lamar is out this week, I think the Houston Texans win. Sorry, not Ravens Eagles. Ravens Texans. I think if Lamar is out this week, it will go to the Texans. I don't think the Ravens defense is as good as it used to be or was last year. It's showing that it's not as good. And the Texans, I don't know if it's hard because the pass rush of the Ravens does look effective and could be very effective against the weaker O-line of the Texans. However, I think that if you're talking, hey, one quarterback's a backup and one quarterback's a starter, CJ Stroud, who's been a top 10 quarterback, obviously he's struggling with the lack of an O-line. But regardless, I think that what we're looking at is we're going to see a Texans win against the Ravens if Lamar's out. If Lamar's in, it's going to be the Ravens because Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson. So that is what I will say as we head into the fourth quarter. Put the fours up, ladies and gentlemen. Get yourselves ready. We're in the fourth quarter of this game on today's clock. As we start the clock in the fourth quarter, we got 6 more games to go over. So let's start talking about it. Titans, Cardinals. Cardinals are going to have a bounce-back game this week. Obviously, I talked about Kyler and my opinions on Kyler and where he stands with the Cardinals organization. The Titans are one of the worst teams in the NFL just solely off of the fact that I think their coaching is really the rough patch. I think Brian Callahan's not a very good coach, and I very well could see him being gone, especially after a loss come Sunday against the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are going to win. I think the D-line is going to get back there. Calais Campbell, let me tell you, has been a surprise when it comes to his effectiveness at the ripe old age of 39. He's 39, and he is having one of the fastest get-off times of any defensive lineman. Calais Campbell has been one of the best D linemen for the Cardinals, and he is their oldest lineman. They thought, a lot of people, when we saw the signing of Calais Campbell comes to the Cardinals, were like, oh, cool, he's going to do his farewell tour. He's going to do his final year with the Cardinals. He's going to be able to pour into Darius Robinson. He's going to be able to pour into these young guys and be able to kind of coach them up and be like, hey, I have all this stuff I've learned as a vet. All this stuff I've gathered and learned as I think it's 17-year vet because he came in at 08. As like a 17, 18-year vet, he's like, I have so much to learn. And then he's being one of the most effective players for the Cardinals. And he's become sneakily, I think he's been one of the most successful signings for the Cardinals in the offseason. He has made a huge impact for the Cardinals, and I think that we're seeing that. Also, another thing, Max Melton is proving himself to be a top corner for the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals defense has been extremely effective. And I think that as a result, you're seeing that. It's been reflected in the lack of scoring when it comes to the opponents they've played. Really, the Cardinals have not given up many points, and their defense has been really quite stout. Their offense has just not been able to match the production. And Titans, I think Cam Ward is going to be an effective rookie. I think he's going to be a good rookie, but I think that he just has really struggled with the coaching situation he's in and the situation that he has. The cards he was dealt, his defense has not been able to help him, but I think the Cardinals are going to win this game. I think it's going to be a pretty big blowout, just solely off the fact that I think the Cardinals defense could shut out this Titans team. I think Cardinals defense is that good. I think once they get Will Johnson back, they are going to be a much more proficient defense than they have been. But I think the Cardinals defense is sneakily top 10, if not top 5. They've been extremely effective. And I think you've seen that with Jonathan Gannon and what he's been able to dial up as the defensive coordinator and the head coach. What I will say is Drew Petzing has hindered the Cardinals. And what I will also say, because I want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. started to figure it out. He had a lot of drops, a lot of plays where there was interceptions based off of Marv, but he finally caught a play big time in the fourth quarter, made a huge impact, and I think we're going to start to see Marvin Harrison Jr. kind of go on the up and up back, especially against this Titans team that does not have a very good defense. I could see a very boom game for Marvin Harrison Jr. if Kyler can deliver the ball and makes the right reads, because I think what we've seen is Kyler has been struggling in that regard. On to the next game, Buccaneers versus the Seahawks. I think the Buccaneers win this game. I think the Buccaneers were able to hold their own against the Eagles, who are probably going to be one of the top teams coming out of the NFC. And as a result of that, I think they're going to pretty handedly beat the Seahawks. The Seahawks barely beat the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were not able to have the good offensive production. And I think the Buccaneers have a better offense than the Cardinals by far. I think Baker is a much better quarterback than Kyler is right now. You have Emeka Egbuka, who was their third wide receiver, but has been showing himself to be good enough to be a number one wide receiver. Keeps making these crazy catches and has been a really effective receiver. Chris Godwin came back and showed that he still obviously is recovering, but has still been an effective player. Bucky Irving, I think this offense for the Buccaneers is going to be able to outpace the Seahawks offense no matter what. And if it becomes a game of like who can score more, the Buccaneers win. But I also think the Bucs defense is better than the Seahawks defense. So looking at it from a who's better, simply stated, I lean towards it's going to be a Buccaneers win come Sunday. Lions-Bengals. Lions are going to put up another 52 bomb. I think the Lions are going to put up 52 or more points. I see them going above 49 points against this Bengals defense. This Bengals defense is worse than the Bears by far. And the Lions put up 52 points against the Bears. If I am someone who is looking at it and I'm looking at a line, and if the line is, say, do they score more than 42 points? I'm taking the over because I think the Lions have a very strong offense. They've shown that they've bounced back after that first week against the Green Bay Packers, and they have shown that they are a top offense in the league. And as a result of that, I see them absolutely laying the hammer on the Bengals that cannot score right now because Jake Browning is their quarterback. I see the Bengals, if not this week, then next week or the week after, trading for a Russell Wilson, trading for a Kirk Cousins, trading for a Jacoby Brissett, trading for a Jameis Winston, trading for a backup that is better than Jake Browning because they do not know what to do when Jake Browning is in the game. Jake Browning is not going to be the player that makes your team competitive. And when you have so much money in that offense, it has to go. And if it does not go, it is not going to be a good day for Bengals fans. And if they don't trade for a quarterback, I don't see the Bengals getting a win I don't see them getting a win for a while. They're going to have to be able to get lucky enough to have a team that doesn't have a good defense. But they've been playing teams with competent defenses and extremely high-powered offenses. And if they keep going against it, they can't outscore with the defense they have if they have Jake Browning at the helm. Commanders, Chargers. If I'm not mistaken, which I could be, but I'm pretty sure, I saw the news that Jaden Daniels will be coming back, will be being the starter for the Commanders again. And I think that you're going to see a slug out between the Commanders and the Chargers. You have the Chargers coming off their first loss. Their offense looked really rough. Their defense still played well, but their offense was not able to produce and struggled. And as a result of that, you saw the Giants beat them. And the Giants have a good defensive line in Kayvon Thibodeau, and they were able to get there. The Commanders have a better pass rush and better defense than the Giants. And the Chargers, if they can't figure it out there, they don't have Joe Alt. They don't have Rashawn Slater. They don't have their all-pro O-line. Justin Herbert's going to really struggle back there without a decent O-line. And I think as a result of that, I think this is going to be a Chargers win. Not a Chargers win, sorry, a Commanders win. Both C team names are really confusing me. But I think the Commanders are going to win. I think Jaden Daniels is going to come back from his injury like nothing ever happened. He's going to come in, he's going to light up the field against this Chargers defense. Obviously, it's going to be a really tough game, but I think Jaden Daniels, you're going to see him kind of reclaim his spot as a top quarterback. And then you're also going to be able to see the Chargers be an effective team, but they're going to lose because I think the Commanders are the better team. Patriots versus Bills. Bills win. It's going to be hard stuck to find me have a game where I don't think the Bills are going to be the winning team in this season. The Bills have shown themselves to be one of the best teams in the NFL, not just from a running game perspective, but also from a passing game perspective. When you have Josh Allen at the helm, you have James Cook in the backfield, and a top 5 O-line, that is a recipe for a Super Bowl. I think that if any year of watching the Bills team, this is the year the Bills win the Super Bowl. Of any year I've seen with Josh Allen at the helm, this is the year that I could see that this team that he is surrounded by could lead them to a win in the NFL Super Bowl. I have the Bills going to the Super Bowl because they have looked that good. Next game, Chiefs-Jaguars. The Chiefs looked much better this week. They played against a team that I think had a better defense technically than the Jaguars and put up 37 points. I think they clearly needed Xavier Worthy, someone to stretch out these defenses, and I think that the Chiefs are probably going to win this game. And I think the Jaguars, obviously, Jags would love to see them succeed. I think that they are a good team, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to be able to have that action. So from that perspective, I have the Chiefs winning this game. And it's sad to say, but I have Chiefs winning against the Jaguars in this Monday night matchup. So, and as the game clock runs out, that is time for the clock. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching today's episode of Game Clock. We'll see you next week, once again, here on Game Clock, your new favorite sports show, breaking down this past week and also talking a little bit about the following week. Hope to see you next time. Good evening and good night.